In the first 30 seconds after your heart stops, your brain doesn't go dark. It surges. Starved of oxygen on the edge of death, it erupts into a burst of the exact brain waves tied to vivid memory and intense awareness, in some cases firing harder than it ever does in waking life. Scientists have now recorded this in a dying human brain, and it looks unsettlingly like a mind replaying an entire life. We used to think death was a switch flicked off in an instant. It may be something far stranger. And it may be why so many people who came back describe the very same thing. The first thing to understand is that death is not a single moment, it's a process. When your heart stops, you are what doctors call clinically dead, but your brain does not die with it. Deprived of oxygen, your brain cells can survive for several minutes before the damage becomes permanent. This is the entire reason resuscitation works at all. There is a window, a strange in-between, where a person has technically died and yet can still sometimes be brought back. And it's what happens inside the brain during that window that has stunned the scientists brave enough to look. The first real clue came, of all places, from rats. In 2013, a neuroscientist named Jimo Borjigin at the University of Michigan was studying the brains of rats at the moment of death. She expected to see activity simply fade to nothing. Instead, she saw the opposite. In roughly the first 30 seconds after the heart stopped, the dying brain erupted into a surge of highly organized, high-frequency activity, the same kind of brain waves linked to focused conscious perception. And here's the shocking part. This activity didn't just appear, it spiked to levels even higher than in the normal, waking brain. As it died, the brain briefly became, by some measures, more active than it is in ordinary life. For years, this was just a finding in rats. Then came a moment no one planned for. In 2022, an 87-year-old man was being monitored with an EEG for seizures when he suffered a sudden, fatal heart attack. By pure accident, the machines captured something no one had ever recorded before: the electrical activity of a human brain in the actual act of dying. And when researchers, led by neuroscientist Ajmal Zemar, examined those readings, they found the same thing Borjigin had seen in the rats. In the 30 seconds before and after the man's heart stopped, his brain produced a surge of a specific type of rhythm, gamma waves, the very same brain waves involved in memory retrieval, in dreaming, and in the intense recall of vivid life events. Think about what that might mean. These are precisely the brain rhythms that fire when you replay a powerful memory, which raises an extraordinary possibility that in those final seconds, the brain may be doing exactly what people have described for centuries: playing back a life. The old cliché that your life flashes before your eyes may not be a cliché at all. It may be a genuine neurological event, one of the last things the brain ever does. And in 2023, Borjigin's team went further, studying dying human patients and finding that same surge of activity in the region at the back of the brain most associated with conscious experience. The dying brain, in more than one case, was lighting up in the exact pattern of a mind that is aware. And this connects to something people have been reporting for as long as we've been able to revive the dying: the near-death experience. Across cultures, across religions, across people who believed in an afterlife and people who believed in nothing, the accounts are hauntingly consistent. A profound sense of peace and a complete absence of fear, a feeling of floating, of leaving the body, moving through a tunnel toward a warm light, encountering deceased loved ones or a presence, and that life review, entire decades of memory, returning all at once. A doctor named Sam Parnia has spent his career studying cardiac arrest survivors, and in his research, a striking number of people who were, by every clinical measure, dead, later described lucid, structured, deeply meaningful experiences from a time when their brains should have been completely silent. So here is the question science is now wrestling with, and it's the part almost nobody talks about honestly. What does this actually mean? On one hand, the surge of gamma waves offers a possible explanation for why near-death experiences feel so real and so vivid. It may simply be the dying brain's final, spectacular fireworks, a last flood of chemistry and electricity generating a powerful hallucination as the system shuts down. A beautiful trick of a mind in its last moments. On the other hand, some researchers argue it hints at something we don't yet understand about consciousness itself. How a brain starved of oxygen on the very edge of death could produce experiences more lucid and coherent than waking life. The honest answer is that we do not know. We have recorded the dying brain lighting up. We cannot yet climb inside it and know what, if anything, is truly felt. But even in that uncertainty, something quietly comforting emerges. Because whatever these final surges are, they force us to rethink the thing we fear most. We tend to imagine death as an instant plunge into a cold, black nothing, a light switched off without warning. But the science is beginning to suggest the transition may be gentler and far stranger than that. Not a sudden cliff, but a slow fade. And in that fade, the brain does not appear to collapse into terror. It appears, if anything, to gather itself, to flood with memory, with meaning, perhaps even with peace. The near universal reports of calm, of the fear simply melting away, are not nothing. They may be telling us something real about how a human life actually ends. And that carries a strange and beautiful implication for how we live. Because if the final act of the brain really is to replay a life, to gather up its memories in one last flood, then the raw material of your death is, quite literally, your life. The moments you are collecting right now, the people you love, the times you felt most alive, most connected, most yourself, these may be the very things that return to you at the end. Which means the way you spend your ordinary days is quietly building the experience of your final moments. So live a life worth reviewing. Fill it with the things you would want to see again. Because when everything else falls away, the science suggests that what remains in those last strange and luminous seconds may simply be the life you chose to live. Thanks for watching the Unspoken channel. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Until next time.